Hello everyone, welcome to the Real Storytellers podcast. I'm your host Nikki, and this is episode 102. On today's episode, it's going to be a little bit different. I do not have a guest, and today I'm going to share one of my stories and one of my son's stories. So for those of you who do not know me on a personal level, I have a son who happens to have autism. Now he is my absolute world. And the school system has been a bit challenging. We've had all kinds of experiences, some positive ones, and unfortunately, we've experienced a negative one earlier this year. Now I'm going to share that story with you. Let's go. So I'm just going to go ahead and get right into it. My son got diagnosed with autism at 2 years old, and he is now 14. I've been his voice, I've been his advocate. I'm really involved with every aspect of his life. So earlier this year, he was in an ALE class, which is a class with special education students who need more help. And I was actually a substitute teacher in another ALE class in the same school. So there were two ALE classes that share electives together. So I took a long-term sub position at the school so I could be close to my son for one, and also because I love working with kids with different abilities. My son had a teacher who I really trusted. And when I would ask about my son's progress, she always said, "Oh no, he had a good day," or "We did this, we did that," So I'm thinking he's getting this great education. But during the year, I did notice his 7th and 8th grade year, but mostly his 8th grade, I noticed a lot of regression with my son. And I didn't understand why. I kept wondering, was it something that at home that was causing the regression? But his day-to-day life at home was pretty normal. I just noticed some changes within him. Something in my gut just didn't sit right. I started noticing things. Now, I don't like to just jump off something and then jump to conclusions, but I did notice they were not going to their electives the way they were supposed to be going to. They were secluded in the classroom. And I know that because the class I was subbing in shared the elective, so I knew when they weren't going. And I figured, okay, well, maybe it's an off day, maybe because they have another activity to do or something along those lines. So when I would ask how come they didn't go, it was really some dumb excuses, not enough to keep the kids in. And then one of the paras, which is one of the instructional assistants, she would come to my classroom, I guess, to chit-chat with the other worker. And she would literally say, "Oh, I don't feel like doing anything today." And she would sit there chatting, and I'm like, "Well, who's in the classroom with my son?" She said, "Oh, the teacher's there." And then I would see the teacher around, not in the classroom. And it was, I guess they were with the other para, because usually there's two paraprofessionals, and then there's the teacher. A lot of things that I felt weren't right. Just the way one of the paras would talk about the students, and she just seemed frustrated with her job. And I didn't appreciate that at all, being that my son was one of the students. And of course, naturally, they would tell me, "Oh no, your son's doing great. Your son's doing amazing," or "He's doing good," or "Yeah, he had a good day." Or then my son would come home from school with all this energy, and I'm like, man, maybe he needs something to help him sleep. But I didn't realize it was because they weren't doing hardly anything in that class. Now, naturally, someone might say, "Well, how do you know this?" Well, I would walk by the classroom sometimes in passing. They weren't doing much but be on their laptops. And my son, he's not a laptop person. He's a very hands-on person. I had an upcoming ARD meeting. Now, if you don't know what an ARD meeting is, the ARD meeting is an annual review dismissal meeting. During this ARD meeting, it was very interesting. It was the beginning of April. We sat there. Like I said, I noticed all these inconsistencies. I started noticing things, how the kids were being treated. I started seeing things for what they really were. So before we start talking about the goals, she's just kind of brushing over everything, how my son's doing, and the art teacher's there as well. And the art teacher asked, "How could I get your son more interested in art. So I'm kind of like, well, they don't even hardly go. But I said, well, consistency, first of all. And the teacher just looked at me like, huh? And she's like, okay, well, we can work on that. And I'm like, yes, please. I would like them to go to their electives regularly, because if not, he's stuck in the classroom all day, being that they even eat lunch in the classroom, which is fine, but they need those outlets for the electives. So then she's telling me about all the goals he's mastered from the previous ARD meeting we had. She's telling me he's mastered all his goals and everything's going well with him. And I'm just a little confused because of his regression. And I asked, so about our state testing that he had just taken, was any of your curriculum in the test? And she said, no, the test was pretty hard for them. And I'm like, well, how consistent are you with your curriculum? And she says, well, I'm not going to lie to you. We've been a little off because of the state testing going on. And at this point, I just feel like I'm being lied to. So I'm not happy at this art meeting. And I know she felt it. I felt like I had been lied to for a while, but I was just seeing it. And now that I said something about it, I can tell it really bothered her. So when I left the art meeting, there were other things said, nothing negative. I left the art meeting. Okay. So after that, I get a call from the principal, and she's telling me to go to her office, that she needs to speak to me. So I go, and then she said that the teacher went to her and told her that I was being a conflict of interest, that I was crossing the lines between colleague and parent, and pretty much I needed to basically stay in my lane. And I explained to the principal, well, that actually isn't true, because if I was a conflict of interest, why wait till I say something about what she hasn't been doing? During that meeting with the principal, I actually had told the principal, hey, they're not going to their electives. I told her everything that was going on. They're not going to their electives. They need to be going. I told them all of that, and I told them about the curriculum. I questioned the integrity of the state testing, that I didn't think he was being tested accurately because of the things that I saw, and the things that I heard, and the things that I knew. I put it all together, and I questioned it. I needed them to make a change, and that is all I wanted, was change. So, with that being said, I went ahead and I went back to class. I was upset, but I kept working. And then the following days, my son is in the art class that we're in, because they actually went, I guess because of my complaints, not sure. So they went, and I saw the attitude of the para change. So the instructional assistant, the para, when they were in art, she would work with him and she would sit next to him. But this time, she had her back toward him. And then I noticed the attitude toward my son was completely different. So the art teacher had some beads that she wanted him to play with and kind of like mess with the colors and match the colors with the beads. And she made a comment like, he's just going to put them in his mouth and I'm not going to be responsible for that. And I heard this and I turned around and I was like, what? So I was already upset because I felt like her attitude changed because I brought up the concerns in the ARD meeting. And obviously the teacher shared with her my concerns, which is fine if she did it appropriately, but being that her attitude was changed toward me, I could only imagine what she shared with the para. So after this, I felt something so awful in my gut that no parent should have to feel. I felt like they were going to be taking it out on my son. So that day, I went home, I got a recording device, a little tiny device, and I read up on the Texas state laws, and I put that little device in his backpack because I wanted to see how they were treating him. And I put it in his backpack, He went to school the next day, and sure enough, what I heard was horrible. And I had a nervous feeling all day the next day because I had to hear this 6 hours worth of audio when I got home, and I already knew, I had a feeling I wasn't going to like what was on that audio. So I listened to it all night. I stayed up till about 3 a.m. that night listening to all the audio. Let me tell you, the first 30 minutes, I was already upset. So you can only imagine how I felt after that. I listened to hours of them venting about me in front of my son. I listened to the para yell at my son to find colors. I listened to her mock him. I listened to them talk bad about him in front of him. I listened to them talk about me in a negative way in front of him. Then I listened to her lie about what was said in the meeting with the principal that I had had about me being a conflict of interest. I listened to the teacher telling my son, we have to go to art because of your mother. And I listened to her being very rude to my son, making very rude comments. My son has severe echolalia, and he repeats everything over and over, and he repeats common phrases that he hears over and over throughout the day. It's called scripting, and he uses those phrases often. So he says, I miss you. He says that phrase a lot. And he tells the teacher, I miss you. She says, I don't. Then he says, hey, partner. And she's like, oh my God. And then she's frustrated, you could tell. And then he says, you're right. And then she says, you're not right. It was just appalling to hear her talk like that to my son. And then you can hear the para, the instructional assistant, say to my son, just find the color purple, like just yelling at him, annoyed with him. Then she was venting to another professional about me, talking bad about me in front of him, and saying, well, if she thinks she could do better than us, then maybe he'd be reading already. I mean, you should see his face when he can't find the colors. And I'm telling him, look, just talking very negative about him and me, and saying that, yeah, then he's tinkling on himself. When he goes to the bathroom, something that I didn't even know about. Then she's there getting mad at him and then using her aggression in her tone, like, get over here, and it was just, I don't even talk to my son like that, and I don't need to talk to my son like that. My son doesn't have severe behavior problems. No, he's a kid that likes attention, that repeats a lot, but for the most part, he's pretty to himself. He's not a challenging kid. He's just someone that needs a lot of attention, and you need to work with him hands-on. But he doesn't have severe meltdowns. He's not violent. He doesn't have these huge outbursts, nothing like that, nothing. And for them to talk to him like that and to say all these mean things, and they were venting all day about me, that I think I'm this, and how could I do that, and what I did was stupid. How could I be so dumb to do something like that? That if I had a problem, I should have told them a different way, not bringing it up in a meeting because I made them all look bad. And I mean, it was horrible. Everything I heard that day was horrible. And the fact that they said, if I think I could do better, then maybe he'd be reading already. And they said all kinds of things. And just the way the teacher talked to my son, saying, you're not right. And this bothered me so much, being that my son cannot come home from school and tell me about his day. My son cannot tell me about who treats him bad, who's mean to him. And these people know that, and they took complete advantage of the situation. The teacher was venting about me as well. She didn't just talk ugly to my son, all kinds of things. She was saying that I need to mind my own business. I mean, it was just a lot. But the thing that made it easy for these professionals to do this was the assistant principal was their friend. And then to top it off, the teacher, was chairman of the special education department at my son's school. So her being friends with the assistant principal, her having that title, I think gave her a lot of leverage to do whatever it is she wanted. And it bothers me because I couldn't prove all of it. And the majority of what I could prove was on the audio, because you can hear them working with the kids very little time. And working with my son maybe about 20 minutes the whole day while he was doing nothing. Oh, and then to top it off, in the audio recording, the teacher left early, I guess because she had, a family thing she needed to take care of. She left early that day. And when she was leaving, the paraprofessional, the instructional assistant, said to her, "Oh, well, I'm not taking the kids to PE." She didn't take the kids to elective because of her feelings toward me. I was so hurt because I trusted these people. I trusted them with my heart, with my son. I trusted them that they were giving my son a proper education, that he was being treated accordingly. So I went to the principal the next day. I was so angry I did not send my son to school the next day. I was so upset. I needed to know that he was going to be pulled from that environment. So he was. He was pulled into the class that I actually was subbing in. Now I was a conflict of interest because I couldn't be there in the same class as my son. And I took another position, but I was still at the school at the time. The principal was upset. She's like, "Why would that happen? I'm going to talk to both of them. I'm going to get, to the bottom of it." And I showed her some of the audio, not all of it, but I did show her some of it, enough to where she could understand that he was being treated horrible. And then she asked me if I could have a conference with the teacher. But I was too upset and I was angry, but I was willing to have a sit down with her. I wanted to know what she was going to say. I wanted an explanation. I wanted to know if she had any remorse or compassion toward any of it. Well, we met and she did not. She apologized, but in a very uncompassionate way. And the assistant principal was there, and the principal was there, and the assistant principal assured me, "I'm going to go ahead and take notes of this meeting so you can have a copy of it. We can all have a copy of it, and I want to be able to record this." Not audio record, but just record all the events of the meeting and how it went. We had this meeting, and I told her exactly how I felt. And I tried to take a deep breath and control all my emotions, which is probably the hardest thing I've ever had to do. I let it all out. I told her things I know were true that I couldn't prove. There were a lot of things. There were personal things that she was doing in that classroom that had nothing to do with, the curriculum or anything that should have been done on her own time. I did not play the audio for her. So she apologized for venting in front of my son. And I said, "Well, that's a start, but no, you need to apologize for the treatment of my son." And she said that she wasn't going to do that unless she heard the audio. And I was upset and I shook my head. She said I was making her uncomfortable. She asked to be dismissed from the meeting. The principal actually said, "No, let's finish this. Unless she hears the audio, then she can make a list of apologies if she needs to." That's literally how she said it. And that she had no ounce of compassion. And I even told her, "You're a mother. Like, how would you feel if this happened to your daughters? How would you feel, as a mother, if your daughter couldn't come home and tell you what happened to her after school and she was being treated a certain way?" And I said, if this happened to them, I'm sure you would handle it like this. And she actually told me, don't presume what I would do. You're not in my shoes. I'm not you. You're not me. I mean, she just had like zero compassion. I even repeated some of the audio, what she said, and she just acted like she didn't know what I was talking about. She stayed real quiet. It's like she pretty much didn't want to say anything to incriminate herself. And then the assistant principal was like, are you not going to accept her apology? And I'm like, did you not hear her? She didn't apologize for the treatment of my son. She said she apologized for venting in front of my son. Well, she still apologized to you. I go, are we in the same room here? Do you not understand why I'm upset? Like, obviously, I know you didn't hear the audio, but there were horrible things in that audio. And she's like, yeah, but a lot of that was the para. And I'm like, no, look, I know you're her friend. So I know where this is going to go. And then at this time that she's saying all this, of course, the principal stepped out. And I told them both, look, I don't want to talk. Let the principal come back in and then we can continue this. And she said, okay. And that was that. Now, let me tell you, I don't think I've ever experienced anything so biased in my life. So after this meeting, I got the meeting notes, I think, the next day, and I could not believe what I read. So the assistant principal sends the meeting notes to us in an email saying, I think I got everything from the meeting. If I need to edit anything, just let me know. I read them, and I could not believe what I was reading. She literally left out everything negative I had said about the teacher. She actually even flipped some of it, turned stuff around that I didn't say, and stuff that I did say, she flipped it and made it like if I was saying something positive about the teacher. And a lot of the stuff I brought up about the concerns, about the things she was doing that she should have done on her personal time, about the electives, and about what was on the audio, she kind of conveniently left out a lot of it. I couldn't believe it. I was so angry. I stayed up. I had to edit all the meeting notes, and I emailed it back. And I said, look, you need to make these edits because I want us to be accurately represented. She said she would fix it, and that was that. So I got a hold of the district, and I got a hold of the person in charge of the special education department, and I talked to them. I had to get an advocate. During that time, I was in school full time. I had to even drop my classes at the time because this was taking so much of my energy. And then, to top it all off, during this time, I had vented to another parent about what was going on. This parent's child was not in my son's class, and outside of school, we had a conversation about what was going on. And I was kind of venting to him a little bit, and he had his own experiences with this teacher. So, to top it all off, this parent, I guess, was angry at the whole situation as well, and vented to the principal about what was going on. Like, how could you let this happen? You need to have more eyes there, pretty much along those lines. Because of that situation, I got locked out of my district email, and I tried to get a hold of them, see what was going on, so I couldn't go back to work either. I would guess temporarily fired. I don't even know what the status is to this day. And I felt completely retaliated against. I felt that because I spoke up about what was going on and I brought things to light, that they retaliated against me. This time passed. We had more meetings about my son's curriculum. I made a report to the Texas Education Agency about what was going on. I let them know about the electives. So they did their own investigation, actually. And then I let them know that I saw the regression, that what I was seeing wasn't matching, what she was telling me about him mastering his goals. And when I hired an advocate, the advocate took a look at everything and she's like, no, we need to see work samples. And the work samples were horrible. You could tell they did nothing with him all year, and probably his 7th grade year as well. And what's sad is there was proof of it. There was so much proof of all of this. And so the district was like, well, can we evaluate him? Let's see where he's at. I guess they didn't trust our word or my word for it. And they did. And they saw that he didn't master any of those goals. So even with that, so you have the Texas Education Agency report about the electives. Their investigation was happening. They were getting written statements from the employees. I mean, the employees were lying about how often they would go to their electives. They were saying, oh, they only didn't go for field trips or something special, but other than that, they were there. No, they weren't. And I was a witness to that. And they were still lying throughout this whole process. It was unbelievable. And this is almost like a month later after the audio recording. Meetings, me contacting the district, talking to the special education department about what are my options. But nobody mentioned a grievance, that I needed to file a grievance. So I was reading more into it. I was like, man, I really need to hurry up and file this. So I filed a grievance with the district. Well, of course, I want compensatory services for my son, but I need accountability. I need them to have some sort of consequences for what happened. And then being that my son was still there at the time, he shared electives with these people. And I couldn't be with him anymore. So being with all that going on, I ended up pulling him out of school. Now, I didn't want to do this, but I felt like I had no choice at this point. My son had severe anxiety about school. My trust was broken. I felt like I could not trust anybody at this point. So I pulled him out early, and I started teaching him at home since I was at home at the time, and I started working with him. And I saw some of that anxiety slowly disappearing. I know there's so many aspects to the story. There's my work involved, me not having that position anymore, me being locked out of my district account. Then there's the whole TEA report that they're investigating for them not taking the kids to electives. Then there's the ARD meetings I was having back to back. I've had like 4 of them since the incident. And that was about his curriculum. And then there was me filing the grievance about the audio recording because I genuinely wanted accountability. I felt like they got away with it. And I felt like I had to pull my son out of the environment because I felt it was unsafe. And they were able to still work. My son lost the last pretty much month of 8th grade, and he didn't get to even participate in the end of the year ceremony. All the 8th graders got a certificate and a field trip. My son didn't even get a, hey, how is he doing? How has he been doing? Nobody checked on him. Nobody gave him a certificate. Nobody even asked if he wanted a certificate. Nobody called to check what was going on. It was horrible. So with all that being said, after that happened, I got the conclusion for the TEA report. Then with the ARD meetings for the curriculum that about her lying about him mastering his goals, they offered my son compensatory services. I requested a one-on-one for him to work with him all next year. And I had my advocate to thank for that, to kind of guide me through that process and going through the, all the work samples and everything. And then to top it off, on the paperwork from the ARD meeting, one of the ones we had, they tried to blame the regression on the absences that he had the last month of school. So when I had pulled him out, they tried to blame the regression on that, not because of the teacher. And so I was upset with that. So the next meeting that we had, I had to bring that to their attention as well. And I said, you need to fix the wording on this because this is like a slap in my face. It is not because of what happened that I took him out. I took him out because he was an unsafe environment. Now, this regression has been going on for a long time, and it's because of the lack of instruction from this teacher, and it is the lack of her consistency with her curriculum. So guess what? They ended up changing the paperwork. So that was the second chapter closed. The third chapter was the grievance, and the grievance did not go my way at all. I had a meeting with the principal, like a hearing basically with the principal, with my advocate, and the attorneys for the district. I had typed out a speech, basically. I didn't have to do that, but that's something I felt I needed to do. And it was about everything. It was about the audio recording, the way they had talked to my son. I had actually brought the audio recording and I showed the attorney. And it was about the lies that continued even throughout everything. Even with the TEA report, how they were lying on their statements. And I told them pretty much the whole shebang. I had initially wanted them to be removed from the special education department. I don't feel that they're cut out to be working with kids with special needs. And I don't feel that the teacher should have her position as chairman of the special education department. After that, I didn't hear anything for about a week, and then they sent me a letter saying that my request has been denied for all of it, and if I wish to appeal, that I had to contact somebody else. So, and then about the TA statements about them lying on their statements, that she couldn't corroborate that for the teacher to be removed from her position as chairman, that was denied as well. Of course, another slap in the face. I emailed the person that I needed to get a hold of to appeal this, and I explained the whole situation and how there was a lack of accountability. And he said, well, let me figure this out. And it was already the summer, so he's like, they're not on contract anymore, but let me see what was done about it. Let me see what I could do about it. That's basically what he said. And that we're going to put the grievance in what they call abeyance. And with that, it basically freezes it. And then from there, if I want to move on and go to the next level, then I can. That's basically what he told me. And the para, something was going to be, put in writing, and she would have to sign it, and it was going to stay with her, basically for her and the teacher. And the teacher has been removed from that position of chairman, and that they would also continue to train them and to give them resources, and basically that it was going to be something written on record about everything. It's not enough, because I don't feel like they should be in these positions, and just the fact that they are capable of this behavior is everything. So I told them that I'm not happy with this. And guess what he said? Well, you already surpassed the time, like there's nothing you could do anymore. You surpassed, the timing of this. This was supposed to be done within 30 days of after the incident. Pretty much they gave me what I wanted in the sense of my son's curriculum with the compensatory services and all of that. And they gave me the one-on-one, and that was pretty much it. I was so drained mentally and physically from this, and I feel like it was just consuming me at this point, because I was so angry and I was so upset and I was so hurt. And more so, I could see the change in my son when school was brought up, with the anxiety that he has continued to have. I will never stop talking about it. And this is why I think this is so important. The treatment of my son is what bothered me the most from this whole experience. But second, it's how many people still support these individuals. How many people are still friends with them? How many people knew what was going on and didn't say anything? There's another para in that classroom that did not speak up or come forward, and she knew everything that was going on. There's other individuals that are their friends, and they have their supporters at the school. I was being treated like crap from other workers in that school because they were friends with her. And it was crazy to me that this happened to my son, and they were acting like they were the victims. It was amazing to me. But what bothered me the most is there were people that knew, and they didn't say anything. There were people that knew how that classroom was being ran, and they didn't say anything. There were people that knew that they didn't do nothing in that classroom, and they did not say anything. The elective teacher didn't say anything. That's what bothered me about the whole situation, is so many people co-signed for this by knowing and not saying anything. And then there was people that were coming forward during the situation. Please don't say my name, but this is what happened. Like, nobody wanted to speak up. And I guess part of the reason was maybe because some of their jobs would be on the line because of it. For me personally, if I know someone and I know that they treat special needs children this way, I'm sorry, but I cannot be their friend. So I say this, if you're a person of faith, even if you're not a person of faith, even if you're not a religious person, but you're just a decent person, please speak up. Our kids have a right to an education, a safe environment, and they should never be denied that. And they should never feel unsafe or have anxiety because of the teachers or the paras. They have a responsibility to these kids, and to provide such a disservice the way my son experienced is completely unacceptable. And I pray and hope that more people speak up when they see someone being mistreated. Do not be that person that does not say anything because you don't want to get involved. And like I said, I know teachers and paras that go through a lot. And, I understand this is not an easy job. By all means, I got both worlds of it. I'm a parent, but I've also subbed. I'm repairing what happened with my son, and I'm in that process right now. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me today. I know that was a lot to take in, and I know there were many facets to this story, and I thank you for hanging in there